Modern cars are becoming more luxurious, faster and more expensive. However, in the 80s of the last century, you can unearth such copies of cars from offices that can simply shut up many modern cars. Partly luxury. Today we will look at the luxury projects of the Touring Company from the 80s. Let's go. And so in 1980 a year with the company tender for 95,000 marks could turn your not particularly remarkable 184 strongly, and which people turned their heads. Externally, the car received a branded Banker black radiator grille and they say money door sills and, of course, classic stylish wheels without the need for the engine of the masters. The center itself was not carried out, but they received this business on purpose, and we know where they, in turn, brought the motor to 215 horsepower. The most interesting thing began in the cabin, the front panel, sports seats. The river would get bored with the electorate adjusting the steering wheel. The correct maps and other interior elements were trimmed from the Blue Office, and the center console itself changed beyond recognition due to a high-class system, just with a million of all kinds of tunes. There was a refrigerator in the glove compartment, and the list of other equipment included a telephone, a full electronic package and other base electronic devices. If you have ever seen a suspiciously unusual school Mercedes, and even with a strange 1,000 seats in the back, you know, most likely you are really lucky. And this is not the tricks of our local culinary here, it smells of luxury. In the 80s, at the request of a very wealthy client, a German company called Stollen Garage turned, in its opinion, modest, ultra-luxurious Mercedes cars, which even today ideally fit into the fleet of another world-class star. And the whole story is connected with the origin of a school child of 8,000 villages. Once one more than wealthy Middle Eastern client housing Stollen's Garage ordered an incredibly chic 500 villages 126 in the back. After these comrades from the East received the keys to this car, he enthusiastically told the owner of the company Boris Sukhanov that now his car has become twice as good, and therefore he wants to change the tires. The Temple, without thinking twice, made an ingenious conclusion: once the car became twice as good, therefore 500. Forcibly necessary, it means thousands of villages. The mistake of luxury in 8,000 villages was more than enough. What is the rare, inaccessible in the Gas 126? The interior colors and the presence in the body of systems of any major manufacturers, which could be located directly on the front panel or on a special panel under the ceiling of a million setting buttons. Kolkov Nikolai Ozerov. It gave the impression of being in the cockpit of a real aircraft. And of course, the most amazing brainchild from the Stollen Garage could boast of the presence of several televisions and even a videotape recorder, that is, a wealthy client. In the first half of the 80s, enjoy watching some of the first part of the author's term comfortably sitting in the rear seats of the records, Oleg adjusting, sipping on the map of the newly extracted excitable bar, and while flying along the highway, you will start speeding from one part of the continent to another. Folding tables could be arranged in the doors and seats, the front panel could be retracted into the collar of the proposed customers, and the trunk could be arranged in the refrigerator. In general, the factory's 500 villages with a full package of shares were often taken as a basis, and specialists have already worked with it that have become much Belgian. The Stetsenko office in 1986 a year showed its vision of ultra-luxury, for example, in Syria in the 23rd body, and the luxury was such that even today this 7 does not look poorly equipped against the background of a sugar loop. In addition to the bright X Premier filled with weight with an obvious claim to sports and 20 and complex paint coating, the car received just a bomb, causing the interior decoration of wooden panels along the perimeter of the cabin, including even folding tables, which, by the way, were designated by the director's arrival, were covered with real leather of concrete of luxury items. Minibayev and a telephone were present, and in the back on the central tunnel there was a TV, video, tape recorder, refrigerator and 24-karat gold plating. So that the rich, fat money, who bought the car, poisoned himself with luxury, and 2 compartments were built in the back of the back seat. In one could hide jewelry and money, and the compartment in which was located among the prime ministers. By the way, you need a relative rarity. All this was also for the electorate. Nature is no less interesting. Did anyone from the class fit? Natalia BBC exclusive. Her feature was a deliberately sporty look and, of course, causing the radiator to the grille, covered with real gold. They also covered the door handles and the gear selector knob. For many, the fact that the sum in those years simply lit up their eyes from such luxury. Well, naturally, the brainchild of the BBC was pleased with the presence of a first-class step, a TV, a kind of bar, finishing inaccessible to the usual class with electric curtains and luxurious back seats of drugs and, finally, a real pinnacle of BBC luxury. Exclusive ICANN meetings on the base of the 126th body with the city as a satellite of 10,000 villages, which even managed to star in the cultural material of the 80s to Kilmine. And, by the way, in addition to the above-listed offices, school children of thousands of villages do not disdain paint from the office, and the masters from the Cibola Company hinted at the luxury of their models by doctors from 5,000 villages, 1,000 villages. And finally, the last car in my review is a Vision. The culture of the luxurious coupe of the grand lyricism class of the specially world-famous Ojibwe office was taken as a basis very quickly. At the time it was at 35 on the side, which could boast of being charged in 6 cylinders with an 88 engine of 286 horsepower. This motor allowed back in 1984. It accelerates to the first 100 in just 6.4 tenths of a second and accelerates to 255 km per hour. Flexion has always been famous for her ex-trainers, and here she really did a great job. The car looked wildly defined due to the ideally expanding body, the rear panel made of thin air, the fences of the huge rear anti-banker fender, the wheels with tiny molded and, perhaps, the coolest elements they were shooting for. The exhaust system of the interior of the 6 from Kim Points was simply mesmerizing. Looking at him, I am once again convinced that the 80s of the last century were a golden era. 4 armchairs, River One's electronic adjustment, individual coloring, aphoristic, hysteria, system and attention, color TV what class. Grand lyricism and from 1985. And what is surprising, because then not even all of our compatriots had at least black and white houses, not to mention colored ones. The Tidy was also individual, with a bunch of electronic speedometer displays, had a reconnaissance step of 40 km per hour. Perhaps this particular yellow copy was bought in the 80s for 275,000 marks and presumably belonged to one of the sons of the president of Iraq from Adam Husinov. Judging by the photos of American soldiers in front of this greatest revolutionary super club, it is obvious that the war in Iraq has badly battered them. This is a very sad sight. Well, if you liked this episode, like and subscribe to the channel. If this video reaches 10,000 people, I will continue with stories from the golden era of the 80s, including Japanese, American and European cars.